my perspective, Psy has some of the coolest music videos. They are like super duper ridiculous and extremely fun. The reason why these videos are so amazing in my eyes is because there is no filter to creativity for them. And it's literally like, let's try and do some of the most ridiculous stuff and put it into one video. And the one thing that I want to talk about today is the camera movement. I think the camera movement of all these videos are incredible, and I want to try and show the influence behind that and try and take my hand at doing it and show you guys how to do that camera movement on your own with no big gear or anything. All you're gonna need is a camera slider, a lens that can zoom in, and a DSLR. The first thing we're gonna talk about is your camera settings, most specifically shutter speed. What I did for mine was I cranked mine up to 1/300th of a second. For me, the more cranked your shutter is, the more zany it looks and the more you can emulate the style. So the next thing you're gonna do is go into your aperture settings. Now I closed my aperture right down, so I went down to my lowest setting because I wanted everything in focus. If you look at his music videos, there isn't really much depth in anything. Basically, it's just super ultra wide angle lens, camera moving frantically, and everything in focus. If you look at a lot of pop style music videos, they have a lot of like crazy crane movement or massive dolly shots, but you can emulate this style with a tripod and a slider. I made my camera super duper loose on the slider. That way I could slide it left and right with ease. That gave it that frantic look a lot better. Now what you want to make sure is that you don't move the camera too frantically, and I was actually coming across this problem a couple times. Make sure your movement is a little bit smoother because the movement of the actor as well as the camera movement that you're incorporating yourself along with the shutter speed is going to look frantic already. And on a small screen, frantic movement doesn't look that bad, but when it's blown up, any sort of camera jitter or movement is going to be amplified. So basically what you want to do is slide your camera left and right in motion with whatever your talent is doing. Now, the cool thing about pop music videos, usually they have some sort of choreographed dance routine that looks really good. But what I was trying to do was emulate that sort of dance movement with the slider. So if my actor went left to right, I would either do the opposite movement to create some dynamics, or I would go in synchronicity with that as if I was dancing with them. So that's something that you can incorporate within your operating style because that is going to emulate on screen. Now that we have the big movement figured out, let's go on to the zooming in, zooming out. And so what I was doing was I was kind of zooming in and out per movement of the slider. So if I moved like an inch on the slider, I would kind of zoom in with the lens. If you look at pop music videos, the dance movement is very almost like robotic. It's so well choreographed that it seems like they're a machine. And you want to do that with your camera movement. And again, you're trying to emulate, if not mirror, the style that the performer is doing with the camera. So what I was doing was every time I moved like 3 inches with the slider, I would zoom in the same amount with the lens to try and create that exact same parallel movement. And so let's say I moved 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches, I would do 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches, and it created a really interesting effect. And then finally, part of this whole procedure and this whole process is your talent. Luckily, with any sort of pop music, they usually have a really good dancer or backup dancers, so that goes into their favor, and that really helps the whole like camera operating process, as well as the inspiration and movement behind how you're gonna operate the camera itself. Okay, and then your final step is the blocking of your talent. So where is that person standing in regards to where your camera is? Now for me, I chose one of the widest lenses that I had, which was a 16 to 35 millimeter. For me, the effect really sold itself when the actor was closer to the lens and we got more of that warping distortion in the lens, and that gives it a bit more music video-y slash poppy vibe to it. I got him to stand about a foot away from the lens and then did the whole movement, and then for a second take I got him to stand about 5 feet from the lens and did the exact same thing. And then when we play it out, you get something that looks like this. One other tip that I'm gonna incorporate into this that you don't have to do, but for me just sells the ridiculousness of what a pop video does, is the idea that a widescreen 2:3:5 aspect ratio dances in the frame as well. So what I did was I animated the 2:3:5 aspect ratio to crunch in whenever Phil kind of waved his arms up. And I thought that was a really cool thing because it's just so nuts. It's so ridiculous. Like why, there is no rhyme or reason to it. It just looks cool and it's fun. And basically all you have to do is get a CinemaScope PNG file, which I have a link to it in the description below. Drag and drop that into your timeline, scale it so that it creates a 2:3:5 bar on the top and bottom of your screen. And then what you're gonna do is create a keyframe marker, mark that at whatever your frame is now, and then find the point that your character does a crazy movement, and then scale it up about 50%, and that's gonna pull it out of the screen. And then if you watch it, it's going to go like this. Just a quick thing, I keep laughing when I look at this video because every time I watch it, I realize that he didn't know that I was shooting this for a tutorial. He actually just thought I was doing this as a test. So thank you so much, Phil, for being cool with me making this into a tutorial and using you as my pop star. And guys, thank you so much for watching this. It was an awesome time making this. Give us a subscribe, give me a comment if you have any ideas for future tutorials or any questions regarding this one, and I'd love to answer it. Okay, I will see you guys in another video. Take care.